Ladies and gentlemen, to the surprise of no one, Sony's Kraven the Hunter is already being considered a financial disaster. So as always, we'll take a long, hard look at this situation and see if we can figure out who in fact is to blame. And we'll even talk about a few people who tried to defend this movie this week, and I wish I was kidding. The lengths that some will go to be a corporate apologist never ceases to amaze me. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Kraven the Hunter limped onto the scene with an $11 million box office opening weekend, officially the lowest ever for a Sony Marvel spin-off project. For comparison, Morbius grossed $39 million in its opening weekend, on its way to a $73.9 million total US haul. Madam Web had a $15.1 million opening weekend, on its way to a $43.8 million total US haul. So what we have here is the clearest case of diminishing returns that we've ever seen. Each subsequent movie managed to make less than its predecessor. And this, my friends, is what happens when you attempt to treat your audience like idiots. You see, the general public has grown smarter in the past few years, especially when it comes to comic book movies. When it comes right down to it, Sony was basically insulting everyone's intelligence by releasing this slop and thinking that people were going to react to it any other way than what they did. Sony has been working quite hard over the past several years to literally ruin their own reputation. More specifically, ruin the reputation of their misguided Spider-Man spin-off universe.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
You see, it's very clear to me what happened here. They got caught up in the success of the Venom movie, and they thought to themselves, well, if that worked, then why not try to use some other Spider-Man characters to replicate that success? What they didn't account for is Venom's name recognition and the fact that absolutely no one gives a shit about Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven. Unless, of course, they are portrayed as secondary characters in a Spider-Man story as they were originally intended. I say again, not every character that graced the pages of a comic book is deserving of their own movie. That's the reality of the situation. This plan, and I use that term loosely, was misguided from the very beginning. For that reason, the blame for this is placed squarely at the feet of Sony Pictures. They greenlit this garbage and they approved these atrocious scripts. And they clearly didn't hire talented enough people to overcome the studio's incompetence.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
Now, there were rumors that with Kraven's box office looking bleak, that Sony was planning on canceling future films in this universe for the foreseeable future. Now there are reports, however, that Sony could just be rethinking their approach, and that Kraven's failure is giving them the motivation to make changes as they move forward. Now, I don't doubt that changes can be made, because there is quite literally nowhere to go but up from here. The problem is that the reputation of these films is already established. So if they did manage to pull a good story out of their ass at some point, I still don't think people would respond to it. It's going to be very hard to make people give a shit about these movies moving forward because we now already have 3 examples of people just not showing up. And it's not realistic to think that things can be turned around so easily anyway. I think now more than ever, it should be clear to everyone that Sony should just cut their losses and move on.
That makes sense.
You can focus on the Spider-Verse movies, you can focus on your collaborations with Marvel Studios, but when it comes to trying to establish new characters on your own, on the big screen, I think it's best if you leave that to someone else. Because you are clearly not capable of pulling these concepts off. I strongly believe that Kraven is the worst of these Sony Marvel spin-offs, and I stand by that. Maybe these movies have just worn me down. I don't know. Maybe my tolerance is at an all-time low. But at the end of the day, there is no denying that these films have issues. Kraven is a colossal failure from the conceptual level on. As I stated in my review, it's poorly written, poorly acted, poorly shot. The story is almost incoherent. There were zero redeemable qualities as it pertains to the overall product.
That's right, it stinks!
Anyone who's been watching me for any amount of time will tell you that even with the worst movies, I can usually find something to praise. But I was hard-pressed to find anything in Kraven worthy of my praise. It was a complete waste of time and resources from start to finish. Of course, this didn't stop some people from coming out of the woodwork to defend this garbage. I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but yes, even the Sony Marvel spin-off movies have their defenders. It's almost like, what the f*** are we even doing here? Is this really the hill that you want to die on? Defending a movie like Kraven the Hunter? I don't get it. And it wouldn't be so bad if people just said, well, I found enjoyment in it in a turn your brain off at the door kind of way. I would accept that. But no, there were people who were actually going on the defensive and seemed somewhat insulted by my opinion. Let that sink in for a moment. I naively thought that if there was any movie that I wouldn't get backlash for, it would be this one. Yet here we are.
Why do these things always happen to me?
I had comments on my video like this one from DeAndre that said, it wasn't that bad, stop being a sheep. Apparently you're a sheep if you rightfully call a movie awful. Good to know. Then we have this comment from Elgin who said, like most reviewers, this guy is just riding the bandwagon for content. A similar comment from Furious Figures said, quote, so you're joining in on the review bomb. You're saying the same thing that the other reviewers are saying. Did you ever stop and think that if multiple unrelated content creators are saying similar things about this movie, that maybe, just maybe, they might have a point? I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I personally don't watch other people's reviews before I do my own. So if I said things in my review that sounded similar to things that other reviewers were saying, then maybe the problems with this movie are blatantly obvious to anyone who is not wearing fan goggles.
It's true.
Also, I think the term review bomb is quickly becoming one of those phrases that is getting used so much that it's starting to lose meaning. It's starting to sound like it's one of those blanket statements, a label that people throw out there as a way of deflecting valid criticism. And make no mistake about it, all criticism being thrown at Kraven right now is 100% valid. Why in the ever-loving Christ would I want to go through the effort of watching this piece of shit, taking notes, writing a review, recording that review, spending time to edit that review, and uploading that review? Doing all of that if my only goal was to just hop on some phantom hate bandwagon. If that was my intention, I could have saved myself a lot of time and effort by just hating on this movie from afar. Why the desperation to bend over backwards to defend one of the worst movies I've seen this year?
You're pathetically predictable.
There were people on X actually trying to defend the appearance of Rhino in this film. It doesn't matter if the design of the character was shit. It doesn't matter if he was brought to life with god-awful CGI. Nope, the shill in me has to defend Kraven and Sony from these evil YouTubers and critics who are trying to take this movie down. Well, I got news for all of you. Sometimes the critics are right. Sometimes critics still display a certain level of standards that most fanboys don't seem to have. Kraven the Hunter is garbage. It deserved to flop. And all of the criticism being thrown at Sony right now is deserved. If you choose to look past all of that, then good for you. Just don't expect everyone on the internet to do the same.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.